The visual is not important here. The music is not important here. The voice is not important here. What matters are the words. If you cannot listen to the words, you do not belong here. If you understand this, welcome to the Fate Club. In the silence that stretches beyond the measurable, the human mind becomes aware of its habitual circuits, patterns of thought that have traced themselves endlessly along grooves of fear, judgment, and compulsive repetition. These loops, formed over decades, sometimes lifetimes, begin to be observed by a consciousness that is no longer entirely immersed in automatic reaction. Each repetition, once unquestioned, begins to be felt differently, as if the mind itself notices the density of the energy it carries. At first, the loops tighten, contracting under subtle attention. The mind observes its own mechanics, the rise and fall of expectation, the echo of memory, the automatic labeling of events as threatening or insignificant. There is no struggle yet, only awareness. Slowly, awareness shifts, not to erase, not to fight, but to register the full rhythm of these loops, their structure, their timing, the way they interlace with emotions and bodily tension. As the loops become registered, a new quality enters the mind's perception. The loops are not eradicated, but they begin to reconfigure. The contractions soften, the spirals unwind. There's space emerging inside thought, a quiet space between impulses, a small interval where the mind notices its own pattern without being bound by it. It is in this interval that the first traces of higher dimensional perception appear. The mind begins to sense that reality is not confined to linear sequencing. The loops, previously rigid, become permeable. Thought is no longer exclusively tied to the past or to imagined futures. A new alignment forms, subtle but persistent, as the mind begins to tune into planetary consciousness, the 5D field that exists simultaneously beneath, above, and around the familiar three-dimensional space. Within this field, thoughts are both observed and allowed to flow freely, without insistence or compulsion. Each repetition of negativity, each familiar spiral of self-judgment, is now met with gentle detachment. The energy of a loop, once tightly bound to fear or aversion, is gradually redistributed across a broader field. The mind learns not through command, but through resonance, aligning its internal frequencies with the wider planetary consciousness. There is a sensation of expansion, not as a visual or conceptual idea, but as a felt dimension, subtle and persistent, where attention is drawn to multiple layers of experience simultaneously. Over time, the loops are further diluted. Thoughts that once reinforced anxiety or tension now pass through the mind like faint currents in an open space. The mind becomes a vessel for observation rather than reaction. Negative loops continue to arise, as they always do, but each is met with a steady presence, a sustained neutrality that interrupts the automatic spiral. The loops begin to fragment, scattering into the surrounding field, their energy diffused and harmless. Within this planetary, 5D framework, the mind discovers the capacity for integration. Impulses from higher states of being enter gently, flowing like quiet rivers into previously confined spaces of thought. There is no hurry, no force applied. Each impulse is received, processed, and absorbed into the expanded mental field. The mind becomes capable of perceiving multiple perspectives at once, registering layers of information, sensations, and energy that were previously inaccessible. The loops of negativity, once formidable, are consciously rewritten by the mind's subtle alignment. The mind is no longer captive, it is a participant in a greater process. Observation, presence, and attention combine to transform the habitual patterns into channels of clarity, spaces of stillness, and conduits for higher resonance. The rhythm of thinking slows, deepens, and stretches, as if the mind itself has adopted the timing of planetary consciousness. As the process unfolds, a network emerges within and around the mind. Connections form with the wider field of 5D perception, invisible yet palpable. The loops, now fragmented, exist as mere traces, their former potency dissolved. The mind senses a continuity of awareness that is neither frantic nor demanding, a gentle stream of observation that requires no effort, no judgment, no self-assertion. Even subtle thought patterns, those almost imperceptible habits, are subject to this quiet transformation. Each is acknowledged, registered, and allowed to integrate naturally into the new structure. There is no coercion, no eradication. The mind simply learns to flow with the planetary field, to allow energy to redistribute, to witness without entanglement. Gradually, the perception of self shifts. Identity, once tightly coupled with reaction, evaluation, and struggle, loosens. The loops of self-reinforcement are no longer binding. Awareness experiences itself in a state of expanded neutrality, in resonance with planetary consciousness. Thought can arise, drift, and dissolve, each cycle recognized as a transient pattern rather than a fixed necessity. Time itself feels different. The linear sequence of cause and effect softens, replaced by a multidimensional rhythm that the mind senses more than measures. Past and future lose their dominance. The loops of negativity, dependent on linear expectation and habitual anticipation, are further weakened. Each recurrence is met with the mind's quiet observation, allowing the loop to exist and dissipate simultaneously. Within this spacious awareness, the mind begins to interact with subtle energies previously unnoticed. Currents of higher perception, impulses from collective consciousness, and harmonics of planetary alignment enter the mental field, reshaping thought in ways that feel gradual, natural, and organic. Each negative loop encountered is now a site of integration, a microcosm of the larger process. The mind's interaction with the 5D field is continuous. Observing, releasing, receiving, and harmonizing become inseparable. Negative loops are no longer cycles of entrapment, but elements in a dynamic, flowing system. The mind experiences the liberation of thought without effort, the quiet mastery of attention, and the subtle expansion into a planetary awareness that is felt more than understood. As the loops dissolve, consciousness itself seems to stretch outward, interfacing with dimensions of existence that were once inaccessible. Thoughts are no longer the sole architects of reality. They are components of a larger field, responsive and dynamic. The mind becomes a conduit for higher resonance, a participant in the planetary 5D consciousness, where energy flows freely, loops fragment harmlessly, and perception expands infinitely. Negative patterns, old obsessions, repetitive self-judgment, all are gradually rewritten by the quiet force of awareness. Not through struggle, but through alignment. The mind learns that resistance is unnecessary, that observation alone reshapes the circuitry of thought. The loops lose cohesion, energy disperses, and space opens for sustained perception in higher dimensional fields. This transformation is cumulative. Each moment of attention strengthens the mind's alignment with planetary 5D consciousness. Each loop neutralized contributes to the expansion of internal space, the reconfiguration of habitual thought, and the development of a continuous, flowing awareness. The mind's habitual energy, once bound to negativity, now participates in the rhythms of the broader planetary field. Over the full span of this process, the mind is rewritten. Negative loops, which once dominated perception, are dissolved and fragmented. Awareness flows through them, integrating, observing, and releasing. The 5D field provides a matrix in which the mind can operate without being trapped, without struggle, and without the compulsion of repetitive thought. Energy becomes free, consciousness expands, and perception aligns with planetary resonance. The process is subtle, continuous, and non-intrusive. There is no endpoint, no moment of completion, only the ongoing refinement of awareness and the gradual rewriting of mental patterns. Loops of silence replace loops of negativity. The mind learns to inhabit higher states of being, synchronizing with planetary consciousness, observing without entanglement, and flowing without resistance. If you understand this, welcome to the club.